Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this talk on building your networking skills in a COVID environment or virtually. My name is Sinead English. I'm a careers consultant. I'm running a company called Hilt. Our website is wearehilt.com. If you're on Twitter, you can follow us at Hilt Careers. We have been working with students and experienced candidates now for over 14 years, helping them on all aspects of the job search and job hunting world, whether it's starting off at the beginning and figuring out what they want to do and where the jobs are, to writing CVs and interviews, to writing CVs and doing interviews. Last year, we published a book, CV and Interview 101. I'm sure a lot of you will have heard of it, which gives you very clear and succinct and straightforward advice on how to write a great CV and how to do a great interview. Hopefully at the Grad Ireland Fair today, you're getting lots of leads on jobs, so you will be needing to have a great CV and do a great interview. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about networking and networking in this COVID environment and what it means for us. So I'm going to touch on 4 different areas today of networking. First of all, what is it? Why is it important to me? How can I do it? And then if we figured out how I can do it, given the COVID restrictions, what sort of a plan can I put in place in order to get it done? So the first thing I would say about networking is that it's not an easy sell. When we talk to people in groups or even individually, we say, okay, we'd like you to network to get a job. The first thing that we'll get is, no, I can't do it. It's not for me. It's only for extroverts. Oh, it's too transactional. I don't like it. It's very contrived. It's inauthentic. It's embarrassing. Really, we get a lot of pushback from people. And what we would say to you here today is you need to put that to one side. Networking is simply having conversations with people, asking them questions about their role, about their job, about how they got their job, about what the opportunities are in that industry. So really all you're doing is having a conversation. And if you can have a conversation with somebody, if you can ask anybody a few questions, then you can network. So networking is really more listening than talking. So hopefully that will make you feel a little bit more comfortable about putting a networking plan in place. It's not about being out there and putting yourself forward and being the center of attention. It's about asking people who are in positions of influence and in positions of information to share that information with you to help you get a job. So let's talk about why networking is important. Well, I don't know if you would be surprised to hear that up to 70% of jobs don't get advertised at all. So if 70% of jobs don't get advertised at all, the next question is, well, how am I going to hear about those jobs and how can I get one of those jobs? And maybe if you are going around the virtual careers fair today in Grad Ireland and you're seeing all the different companies having lots and lots of jobs, you might be forgiven for thinking, well, of course the jobs are going to be advertised. They're right here in front of me. But that is just a small percentage of what is available. So don't think that if you don't get a job from one of those companies that's advertised today, the Grad Ireland Fair or yesterday, that there are no more jobs out there. There are so many jobs out there. And that's why it's important to be able to network to get those jobs. Maybe made slightly more interesting or complicated by the fact that the normal routes that you might use may not be open to you at the moment. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about for the next 10 minutes or so. So let's just first of all talk about why networking is important and why 70% of jobs don't get advertised. So it's about the way companies hire. So if I am a company and I've got a vacancy and I need it filled, the first thing I'm going to do, starting at the bottom left-hand side of that triangle, is I'm going to start looking internally and seeing if there's anybody else who can do the job from within the company resources. And if I can't find anybody, then I will ask existing employees, oh, I'm looking for a particular type of skill set, a particular person. Let me know if you hear anybody, keep your ears open. There might be an internal memo that goes around asking the staff to let the managers know if they hear of anybody. And a lot of companies actually will give you, they will remunerate their employees if they go on to if they suggest somebody who then goes on to get the job. So it's important that you, as a recent soon-to-be graduate or job seeker, are making contacts with people who are in the area where you'd like to work, because they are very likely to be hearing about things through the grapevine, through their contacts, through their networks at work every day. So assume that this company owner who's trying to hire somebody and trying to fill that particular role can't find somebody within existing employees. The next thing that they might want to do is they might say, right, okay, I'm going to go outside my company and I used to work at another company or another 3 companies. I've got lots of my own network contacts. I'm going to ask them, do they know of anybody who could fill this particular role? So again, they're reaching out to their networks, but it's still the so-called hidden job market. It's under the radar. It's not advertised. They then might look at professional organizations. And it's only when they've exhausted all of those different angles to try and find somebody for this vacant role that they will start to use maybe recruitment agencies, websites, adverts, careers fairs, where they start to really get the word out there that they're looking for somebody. So why do employers hire in this particular way? Well, number one, it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot quicker to do it that way. But number two, it's also a way for them to get a heads up on the types of people that they're hiring. So they don't have to go through hundreds and hundreds of CVs up here in the pink part of the triangle to try and figure out who's the right person for the job. So up to 70% of people, to 68% of people in Ireland currently are employed in companies, SMEs, that is companies with less than 250 employees. So 70% are employed by companies with less than 250 employees. So the chances are that those kind of companies are going to be using their networks a lot more to find people and hire people than putting up the ads. So just remember that there is a lot of opportunity out there for you potentially in this market. So just to mention, if you have any questions, hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end. So if you wanted to put them into the Q&A box, and then I'll take a look at them at the end of the session. So what is happening now? So you're going from this kind of environment where you're probably looking at this now going, oh my gosh, nobody's wearing a mask. They're all too close together. This photo was taken before COVID. But you may have been used to going to venues like this. And certainly if you were going to the gradireland fair this time last year, you would have been looking something like this. Everyone would have been so close together. So you're going from this where it's easier potentially to talk to people and to make connections to something like this, which is what you're here doing today. You're listening to me on your screen, whether you're at home or wherever you are, your phone, and we're engaging virtually. So moving from the face-to-face networking to the virtual networking is really something that all of you are going to be able to do, because in some ways we've heard from some of our clients that they actually find it easier to do it this way. So what do you need to do? I mean, maybe you might do this, which is a socially distanced meeting. More and more people now are trying to find ways to meet up and with the distance between them. But I'm assuming for the purposes of this talk that most of you are going to be doing it's the Zoom calls or the Teams calls or the WhatsApp calls where you're trying to establish connections with people. Remember, this is worth your while doing. 70% of jobs don't get advertised. You need to find a way to kind of winkle your way into that green part of the triangle. So how are you going to do it? The first thing is you need a plan. So you need a plan of who you're going to speak to. So remember back to that green part of the triangle, 70% of jobs not getting advertised. They need to know about you. They need to know that you're available, that you're looking for work, the particular area you're interested in, what your area of expertise is, what your plans are for the future. If they don't know about you, how can they possibly recommend you when they hear from their boss or one of their colleagues that somebody is leaving the office and they need to replace them? If people don't know about you because you haven't told people what it is you want to do, well, then there's no way they're going to be able to recommend you because you're just not on their radar at all. And at this point, I would say that some people would say to me, oh, but you know what? I've got 750 connections on LinkedIn, so I'm really, really very well networked. The problem with those is that they are static connections. You need to bring them to life by asking to meet people either virtually or face-to-face, socially distant, but you need to start making the connections with people and making an impact with people so that they're going to remember you when they hear about an opportunity. So here is a very simple plan of action where you're going to research people, identify people you know, you're going to come up with some questions to ask them, and then you're going to arrange the meetings. So people that I know, often people will say, well, who could I be thinking of here? Like, what sort of people should I be approaching? So here's a list of some potential ideas for you where you're thinking, right, okay, let's set myself a goal. I need to find 4 people to follow up with, 4 meetings that I'm going to have. They're called informational interviews, where you're asking people questions about what it is they do, how they got their job. I'm going to give you some more sample questions in a little while. But the types of people that you should be thinking of approaching are, for example, classmates maybe who have worked in this industry before, maybe they did a placement, some guest speakers that might have spoken to you throughout university, your lecturers, your tutors, if they've got a specialist subject, which obviously they will have, probably likely that they will have contacts in industry that you could also reach out to. So maybe you've throughout your extracurricular activities, you've got lots of contacts in areas that you might know. Oh, I know that so-and-so who plays on my soccer team works for this particular company, and I'd always like to know a little bit more about that company. Maybe that could be a potential contact for you. Alumni, your careers office, colleagues or past colleagues in your current part-time job or your past jobs that you've done. Maybe you've done a placement. Maybe it's been a couple of years ago. Now is the time to start kickstarting those relationships again and making sure that they know where you are in your career and what your aims are, because people are programmed generally to be helpful. So it's about tapping into that in this COVID environment. Online networks, I put that down there as the last one. We're talking LinkedIn really there. LinkedIn is an excellent resource for research and for being able to find out who works in what company, but just sending them static emails through LinkedIn or connection requests and thinking, okay, that's me done with my networking, that's not enough. As I said, you're not making enough of an impact. So hopefully you're sitting there thinking, okay, green part of the triangle, I get it. 70% of jobs not advertised. I need to let people know who I am and what I'm capable of. And the way for me to do that is to ask to meet them and ask them a few questions about what it is they do. So thinking about that, then you're going to make your plan. You're going to start off local. I would suggest, back to this spreadsheet here, contact one and then contact two. So contact one, the first person that you contact to do this informational interviewing should be somebody that you know pretty well. I mean, don't aim so high at the beginning. Sometimes we would have clients who would say, oh, my aunt knows the head of marketing for all of Europe for this company. And because I'm interested in a career in marketing, she's arranged for me to speak to that person. That is probably too high of a goal. Great that you can make these contacts with people, but are you going to feel comfortable asking them the questions that you think, well, I'm not really sure if this is for me, but I just want to ask you a few questions? You'll probably feel a little bit self-conscious. So start local, i.e. start with people you'd feel comfortable with. Maybe people who've done your course last year, the year before, and they've now graduated and they're working somewhere. That might be a good place to start. Then when you've made that connection and you've had that informational interview, then you could maybe move a little bit beyond your comfort zone and say, okay, now that I've done that and it wasn't that bad and actually it was fine and I learned a lot from it, I'm going to now speak to maybe somebody that I used to work with on my placement 2 years ago that I haven't spoken to for a while. They're quite senior in the organization, but I got on very well with them when I was there, so I could do that as a next step. So really what we're asking you to do here is like a research plan. So you identify who are the people I need to speak to and what am I going to ask them? And then the contact log, the third column here, is just for you to keep track of, I rang them, they said they'd ring me back, or I left a message, that sort of stuff that you're backwards and forwards a little bit with people. So what are you going to ask them when you finally arrange to meet them? They say, yeah, sure. What do you want to know? And you'll be meeting them more than likely in a virtual setting. So, Zoom or Teams or Google Meets or whatever you want to use, they all work perfectly well. Honestly, putting this off until, I'll just wait until I can actually see them face to face and go for a coffee with them, that could be a while away yet, who knows? So there's no reason why you can't initiate and start those informational interviews now via virtual. All of companies hiring is virtual now for the next few months anyway. So really you're just using the platforms that are already existing. So an informational interview, you're finding out more about what's happening in that green part of the triangle by speaking to somebody who's working there. So how can you start? What kind of questions can you ask them? So it's important in these informational interviews that you realize you're not there to show them how much you know. You're there because you don't know. So find people that you're comfortable saying, look, I'm not really sure about this industry. I don't really know that much about it. I think I might be interested in it. So can I ask you a couple of questions? So some sample questions might be, how did you get your first job in this field? What do you think are the key areas required? What's the best part of your job, the worst part of your job? How do I find out more about ABC? What are the best resources? I'm really interested in this sector, but I don't really know that much about it. What should I be reading? What are the good websites? What's the typical background of somebody employed in your company, in your firm? You look at a lot of CVs and applications throughout the course of a month or a year in your job. What makes a standout CV? So all of these questions, you're asking them to the person who is in the green part of the triangle. So two things then are going to happen. The first thing is, keep an eye on my time here. The first thing is that you are going to get the information that you want, which is great. But the second thing is that you are then you're getting profile in front of that person. You're getting to know that person a little bit better, who's in the green part of the triangle. They're getting to know you, and they could be saying, gosh, you know, I never thought you'd be interested in that, or I never thought of you. I'd forgotten you were doing that course in college. I'm really glad you contacted me, because just last week we had a vacancy. Now, you know, I didn't know about you at the time, but the next time. So you're starting to plant seeds with people, and that's really, really important to do. You know, this phrase, oh, if you hear of anything, let me know. If you just throw that around and say to people, it's absolutely worthless, because nobody's going to know what it is you actually want to do. So they're not going to think about you when something comes up. So you need to be a little bit more strategic. Have your informational interviews. Send them the questions in advance. You say, look, I want to talk to you. It will take 20 minutes to a half an hour and no more. I've got some questions. Can I send them to you in advance so that we can just, you know, get started as soon as we start the call, rather than getting on the call and talking about the weather for 10 minutes and being a bit embarrassed and how do I start this off? So you're really just setting it up for success at the beginning. So just a couple of questions coming in here. Would you advise reaching out to employers on LinkedIn to network prior to applying for a job or going for an interview? You could try it. I mean, I always say when you are making a connection request on LinkedIn, and that applies to if those of you listening today, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to accept your connection request under one condition, and this is the condition that I think you should make all connection requests under, is that you include a message with it. So just, you know, Joe Blogs wants to connect with you. Oh, I don't know who Joe Blogs is, and it just won't happen at all. I would be cautious about, if you've got an interview coming up, trying to connect with the interviewer beforehand. I think that could be seen as a little bit of, you know, not that advisable. But certainly what I would do on LinkedIn is I would make sure that I have looked them up. I would make sure that they know I've looked them up. I wouldn't go to hide my profile for looking people up, because that's part of your preparation. And, you know, let's face it, you know, if I'm going for an interview with somebody, or going to pitch somebody for a piece of business, I'll do my homework on that person. So I'll know what makes them tick, what their background is. So it's very important that you would do that as well. But I would caution against maybe making connection requests just prior to an interview. Any tips on building networking confidence? So yeah, I mean, that's what this whole talk is really about. I mean, what I'm hoping I'm doing is making you see it as a research project. Identify people that you know well, that they're not scary people, very high up people that you think, oh my gosh, I'm even scared to, you know, send them an email, and arrange to meet them virtually or distanced. Ask them these questions, send them the questions in advance. Look at it like almost like a research project. If you're at college and I said, right, okay, I want you to research this particular industry. I want you to find 4 people who work in it, and I want you to ask them these questions. You would probably say, yeah, okay, I can do that. That's no problem, because it's for college. But as soon as I flip it and say, well, it's actually for you and about you getting a job, people become a lot more self-conscious. So just try and think of it like it is a project. And normally, I would say in 99% of the time, you will have success with this because people want to help you. So 8 things to remember. And I see a couple more questions coming in. I'll get to them shortly. First of all, takeaways from this talk: 70% of jobs never get advertised. You look around the Grad Ireland Careers Fair today on the screen, you'll see all those companies and you'll think, that can't be true. It is true. So you're going to have to work a little bit to find those jobs. But the success rate and the hit rate in getting one of those jobs is much higher, because you have to put in more effort to get them. So, you know, the higher the effort, the higher the reward. Stands to reason. People are not mind readers. Nobody really knows exactly what it is that you want to do with your career. Well, very few people do. And certainly not your extended network of people. They don't know. They probably think you're still in first year and you're actually just about to finish college. They probably think you're doing a course in engineering and you're actually doing a course in history. Like, people don't wake up in the morning and think, oh, I wonder what Sinead English is doing today. So you need to force the issue. You need to plant the seeds with people to get them to think about you. One question you're not going to ask them in your informational interviews is, can you get me a job? Would you have any, you know, can you put in a good word for me? Because that's off the agenda. That makes them feel uncomfortable, and they might just say, oh, well, contact HR, which kind of is a backward step, really. So what you want to be doing in those informational interviews is just getting the information, planting the seeds, ask the question at the end, is there anybody else you recommend I speak to? Which keeps the conversation going. But they're not mind readers. You need to tell them. People's natural default is to help you. So, people don't think, how am I going to really annoy somebody today? Well, hopefully they don't, people that you hang around with. So if you ask somebody to do you a favor, can I meet with you for half an hour? Can I have half an hour of your time? I had a few questions about what it's like to work in this particular industry. I know, you did my course last year, or you're a friend of my brother's, or, you have some connection with them. You're not just randomly pulling them out of LinkedIn. Their default is to help you. And you know what? People love talking about themselves. So all you're doing really is asking them to talk about themselves. How did you get your job? What's it like here? What's the best thing? What advice would you give me? All those sort of things, they will come naturally to people. They will want to share that information with you. Take control of this. This is your project plan. I think so many times we're very reactive when it comes to looking for a job. We see an ad in front of us, we apply for it. You and thousands of others. So how about, trying to create a job plan, coming up with your own spreadsheet saying, this is what I'm going to do this week or next week. You know what? It'll feel a bit uncomfortable at the beginning. It's so much easier to just click apply here, attach CV, send. But the odds of you getting one of those jobs is so much against you than creating your own opportunities. So do your informational interviews. These are the things to take away. 30-minute max. Ask answerable questions, not things like how much money do you earn, or how can you get me a job in here? Things that you want to know. On our website, wearehilt.com, if you go into the blog, there's a couple of blogs in there. If you just search informational as a keyword, a couple of blogs about questions to ask, so it'll give you a bit more information on it. Video calls work just fine. Don't be waiting for everything to get back to, so-called normal before you start this process. Video calls work just fine. Think about it. What's the worst thing that can happen? What is the worst thing that can happen if you start this particular process? People might say, no, sorry, I'm too busy, I can't meet you. That's probably the worst thing that is going to happen to you. And that's not too bad. I'm sure at some stage somebody has said no to you. They're not going to come around and start laughing at you or go, oh my God, I can't believe they asked me this question. People will admire you. Our experience is that when you go down this road and you arrange to meet people for informational interviews, networking with people, they really stand back and they go, well, fair dues to that person. They just got themselves organized. They sought me out. They asked a few questions. I was more than happy to help them. Remember, people's default is naturally to help you. And finally, be patient. If you don't hear back from somebody that day or the next day, don't worry about it. They will get to you. You're the one who wants something. So, it's important to remember that, you need to be a little bit patient. And no matter what people do for you, whether it's like a full on, they meet you for half an hour and they chat to you and they give you some information, or they just recommend a name of somebody or recommend a website that you should be following, always get back to them and send them an email and say thanks, really appreciate that, because you never know when you're going to need to call on them again. And it should be a two-way thing. Maybe there's things that you can do for them as well. So don't just be a taker, you take all the information and they never hear from you again. Just a simple that really appreciate your time. That's exactly what they will want to see. So there's the 8 things to remember of networking in a COVID environment. Honestly, it's really the same as networking in a pre-COVID environment, but you're going to be using maybe slightly different tools in terms of platforms and engaging with people virtually, but it's not really an excuse to not start the networking process. So I've got a couple more questions that I will just answer here, and then if you've got any more, you can pop them into the Q&A box. So somebody is asking, what information should I be sharing on my LinkedIn profile? Should I upload my CV? So, well, I think LinkedIn are very good at leading you almost by the hand and showing you what information should be on your profile. I would say you need to have a strong summary at the top of your profile. There's a space for it. I think there's a couple of hundred characters that you can put in there. So make sure that's a strong summary. Also, your headline, the line that goes underneath your name, make sure that's a strong headline and not just final year student. So they need to know what you're studying. Information about your education, the modules that you're doing, projects that you've worked on, past jobs. So all of the usual things that you would have in your CV, you should put in there as well. Remember as well that LinkedIn is search, like basically a big database of information for employers. So you need to make sure that the keywords from your industry are on your profile. Because what employers will do, and we've done this ourselves at Hilt, is you can search by keywords, and that will give you a list of all the people with those keywords in their profile. So if you are in an industry or you're studying a subject and there are lots of buzzwords in that industry or the area you want to work in, you have to make sure that they're on your CV as well. So the skills section on your CV or on your LinkedIn profile is very important. You can put in up to 50 keywords. So, look around at other people's profiles who've maybe been working in the industry for a few years, see what keywords they have in there, and then use those ones. Should you upload your CV onto your LinkedIn profile? Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't. The only thing I would say to that is make sure there's consistent. Sometimes people will maybe bend the truth a little bit on their CV because it's a limited amount of people that see it. Whereas on your LinkedIn profile, you can't really be telling too many fibs because more people see it. So make sure that the dates are consistent and the courses and everything that you've done are consistent as well. Okay, so hopefully that's given you some hints, some tips, and most importantly, some motivation and some confidence to try networking to unlock the 70% of jobs that never get advertised at all. So the best of luck. I hope you have a great rest of the day at the fair and the best of luck in your careers.